Now, earlier this week, children's doctors called for a ban on smacking kids across the UK. They say that the current laws in England and Northern Ireland make it harder to identify when youngsters are being abused. So how should we be dealing with kids when they act up? If your little one is lashing out or the naughty step just isn't working anymore, Kirsty is here to share her top tips and answer any questions that you might have. So do give us a call. 0207 862 2222 is the number for any questions that you might have. Same number as always, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. Isabel, I'm going to start with you. Thank you very much for sticking around with us. You've got 3 children. They're heading into they're in their teenage years and early teens, 11 to 16.
Yes, that's right.
Do you have any parenting struggles you'd like advice
Oh gosh,
with?
yes. You know what? I was just thinking that it wasn't that long ago, only a few years ago, that I got so desperate as a parent that I actually called a parenting helpline. And I really was at a very low ebb, and I was desperate for the person on the other end who was lovely and really listened to me to give me some advice, like what expert can I go to, what psychologist can I bring in? And she said, you know, you are the expert in your children. And my goodness, that really resonated with me. I suddenly thought, she's right, I'm the expert in my children. And that's the approach that I think the government should take on a matter like this. The government doesn't need to interfere in people's private decisions about how they manage the challenges with their children. So we don't need new laws to ban the type of very low level tap here or tap there that parents occasionally, or even the best of parents occasionally deliver. We've already got laws to protect against child abuse, quite rightly, and I don't think we need to go any further.
Would you smack your kids? Have you smacked your
Certainly not now. They've smacked me back.
Well, there's an interesting point.
I think I could count on the fingers of one hand how many times I in total smacked them, and there are 3 of them, so that's probably about 1 smack each. And I think on each occasion that I did it, I felt pretty rubbish about it. I think I felt that it was a parenting fail, but that it probably was effective at the time. So there are 2 different things going on there, aren't there?
Put that to you first of all, Kirsty. How
Yes.
do you feel about smacking then?
So I don't agree with it. I've never smacked my children. I've looked after children for almost 30 years. Obviously, when you look after somebody else's children, it's very much frowned upon for smacking them. So you find other ways to manage behaviour. And so that's what I've taken into my own sort of role as motherhood now, is not getting there. I do feel like if you're smacking your kids, it's when you've got to that last kind of ounce of you've lost control.
Well, you hear a lot from parents, and we speak about it in the show, that they have this sense of guilt after they have smacked their child.
Very common.
And I wonder whether that's because it's come from a place of knowing that that was a last resort, that was almost a loss of control, that they had no other resolve to come to. They had nothing else to reach for.
I think it is, because when you do sort of lash out to smack, I don't think that's not your intention when you're trying to correct the behaviour or talk to your child about what's gone on.
And it can be physical with children. You know, I'm thinking particularly of those really difficult years. The challenges don't go away, by the way. They just change in nature, don't they? But those difficult years when you've got a child, like a 3-year-old having a tantrum, and they are thrashing around and they're lashing out at you. And sometimes children can pull your hair or bite you, or I'm not saying mine did this.
I'm experiencing all of that at the moment, so it feels like
something that actually prompts a parent to react almost instinctively. You know, human nature will tell you that if I punch you now, you're probably going to come back at me. And not always is it possible for your parental instinct to override that actual, nature telling you, push back.
But I suppose we hope that it does in most cases.
In the 99.9% of cases it will do.
I just want to read a quick social media question we have from Betty on Facebook. Thanks for sending this in. My mother-in-law always told me, don't smack kids, take away what they like the most. Is that a good punishment, would you say, Kirsty?
Well, I mean, it's not smacking kids, so it's probably good. Take away what they like the most, For some kids that might work, for some, no, because you're taking away, they see their behaviour...
get angrier, don't they?
Well, they get angrier, but also you're taking something away from them, so they can't express their feelings or their frustrations because something might get taken away from them. So I think going ahead through life, then that could probably have some deep-rooted things.
Issues.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the aim as a parent, is just for your child to have to spend as little money as possible as in therapy when they're an adult, or start saving now for them. Anytime you smack them, just put an extra couple of quid in the bank for them. Why do children misbehave in the first place? Is it because they are just wanting to be naughty?
No. And there's always a reason for behaviour. And as parents, I think we have to play detective. So that's a new role you take on when you become a parent. You become a detective right from when they're babies. You know, why is the baby crying? You know, is it hunger? Is it a wet nappy? You know, have they got colic, reflux, all those things. And then as it moves into the toddler years, usually with toddlers, it's one of three things. It's usually frustration because they haven't got the vocabulary there yet to express exactly how they're feeling, tiredness and hunger. I mean, I think we've all seen like a hangry child.
I mean,
we know
I
how we
suffer
are.
for it.
You know.
So instead of smacking, we're ruling that out for now. Sorry, Isabel. What other things can we do?
So I think it depends on the scenario, obviously. But if you're talking about toddlers, prime examples are like when you're in, I don't know, play groups and things. You know, you want to have your cup of tea and a slice of cake with the other mums, but really you need to be keeping an eye on a child. If your child is a child that hits or takes other toys off other children a lot, then you need to be really watching them because you want to see what the triggers are, you know, what triggers them to do that and try and intervene. But if in the moment they hit, they bite, they show some sort of negative behaviour towards another child, it's important to go up, check the other child's okay, make sure your child sees you talking to the other child and checking they're okay. Obviously their parent or carer should be around to deal with them, and then you take your child away. And it's not giving them time out in the sense of sticking them in a corner on their own to deal with it. It's sitting with them. So I call it time in rather than time out. And let them calm down if they're very upset and angry. Offer them a cuddle to help that.
Let them calm down, because I'm going through this myself. I have a 21-month-old and he's already displaying tantrums. And some of these, you know, he gets really, really cross and I'm scared he's going to hurt himself. And how are we letting them calm down? Because I can't just let him march around the kitchen willy-nilly because he may hurt himself. If I try and constrain him, he's going to try and bite me. I know he sounds like a right treat. He is lovely. He's gorgeous. But normal. He has his moments.
It's frustration. So I had one of my children would be very happy just to sit and cry and sob onto me, and that just really would console them and make them calm down. The other one, just sitting near them and letting them be. Obviously, if they're in a kitchen where there's lots of dangerous things that they could hurt themselves on, then you might want to remove them from the kitchen. Take them to another room, sit them on the sofa, do something in a calmer environment, but take them away from the situation that they're in that's causing the frustration, and let them calm down. And then once they've calmed down, just gently talk to them in a way that they're going to understand, obviously, for their age and stage of development. And like I say, it's like playing detective and learning those triggers so that in future, when you can see it's happening, you can just give little prompts and little reminders of we use kind hands, we use gentle hands, and those little things. So it's more positive language towards them rather than don't and no and stop.
So hard.
It's very hard.
So hard.
I know. I make it sound easy. I know I make it sound easy, and it is hard. You know, I'm a parent myself. I do totally get it. It's hard.
0207 862 2222 is the number. Do you have any tips for us, or maybe you have some questions for Kirsty? Now, I've focused on toddlers because it's my area of trauma at the moment. But what about other age groups? Do you have to parent differently and discipline differently as children get older?
I think it's just a continuation, isn't it? As it's important to really tune into your children, I think, and the younger they are, the better. And then, you know, you can just continue that as they get older, really. You always want to make sure your children understand that you're there for them should they ever need you, because that will help open up dialogues. But I think as kids get older, they don't want to be sat down and have those, I mean, you probably remember as a child, I remember this, we need to have a chat. Like the colour drains from you. Yeah, the dread.
Just go cold.
And so, you know, when you're playing taxi, which you'll probably know, you often do when you have older children, we play taxi a lot, that's a great time to have a little conversation with them, because it's normally on a short burst of one. You've got 10, 15 minutes in the car, so it's not for too long. They can get out if they need to. And they don't have to make eye contact, because it's just less confronting if they're not making eye contact.
Do you use that?
I think it does work quite well. I would love to hear your take on sibling rivalry. I've got two girls who are very close in age, and the older one is, I'm going to just say this, sorry Rosie if you ever watch this, she can be quite unpleasant to her younger sister, and I know this is normal. Sibling rivalry, every parent who's got multiple children will witness that, and there's always two in an argument, so I don't want to say one's always worse than the other, but that can become almost pathological in some cases. What are your top tips for dealing with that in older children?
So firstly, how old is she?
So the two girls are 13 and 11, and they are absolutely gorgeous. They've got everything going for them. I don't want to breach their privacy too much. This is nothing too unusual. It's a classic
it's
case
very
of sibling
very
rivalry.
normal. And they're very similar in stages of development and things as well, which is possibly why they clash a little bit as well. And have they always been rivals?
Yes, always. And I keep hoping it's going to stop, and it gets worse.
So sometimes it can come down to, how much time you spend one-to-one with each of them without the other one around. And especially when you've got children really close in age, you quite often do a lot of the same things, and they go to the same groups and the same activities.
Yes.
They do all the same things because they're so close in age that they can. Yeah. And sometimes they just want their own space, and they want their own time, with you. Or the
one-to-one thing I think is a really
own.
helpful tip, actually, because if it's particularly for working parents, you're struggling to carve out any time.
Definitely.
And the idea that you're going to parcel it up is a bit counterintuitive,
but it makes sense that that's what children would crave as well.
It definitely does, and it works for younger children as well. The same.
Michael from Aberdeen, I'm going to go to a call now. You work with adolescents, so it kind of ties into this very nicely. Do you have any advice, or do you have a question for Kirsty?
Well, to be honest, I'm actually a bit concerned about this.
Okay.
You're looking at children and adults, like adolescents.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at the brackets, they are both exactly the same. They are both like when they get into these sorts of situations where they actually fight, like it's fight or flight. Mm-hmm. They literally have to. They get into a situation where they don't know what they're doing or how they can actually get out of the situation.
Yes.
So you can't blame them. You can't blame them at all. So I'm looking at the way you all are putting it into a certain aspect. If you put into a medical aspect, it's down to the individual, the person that can calm them down. And normally the person that can calm them down is the person that can do the simple brace of what we used to use in America, which I'm actually English, but we done it in America where it's actually just what we used to do as you were doing it as in the womb, and actually just cuddle them and hold them.
Well, we discussed that different childs operate differently. Some operate really well with the restraint and the hold. My son doesn't love that at all. So but you appreciate that every child, like every adult, every adolescent will be different and will react differently to different approaches.
But with adults, it's a difference. With adults, you need to have a majority of literally understanding their trigger, what is triggering them, and literally working out a lot of autism is sounds, lights.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just going to stop you there purely because we're not talking about adults. I mean, I think when it comes to adults misbehaving, they have to start to take responsibility for that and work out their own triggers. That's not for a parent to be doing at that point. But thank you very much for your call, Michael. But I suppose Michael's kind of echoing what you're saying already, that there are some children that are going to operate really well in that sort of brace cuddle position. Others that won't, and to work out what your individual child is triggered by.
For older children, I mean, I would definitely ask, do you want to cuddle? I mean, I do that with my 11-year-old, do you want to hug? I don't, and she's a cuddler anyway, which is, I quite like.
That's nice. Lucky.
It's nice, yeah. Cuddly children, love it. But it's on their terms, it's not me chasing around the house going, come and give me a cuddle,
I'm sure sometimes you want to do that.
Oh, now she's 11, I'm like, it's not quite the same. But she's still there, ready for her cuddles and things. And I think, if she's having a tough time about something or she's had one of those, how should we say, attitude moments, where she's maybe not spoken too kindly, we've talked about it, then I will always offer a hug afterwards to make her know that it's okay, I understand, I get where you're coming from. It's not necessarily right how you've spoken to me or what you've done, but look, we can hug it out and it's all fine.
And she knows you're still there.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think. We hear this word sort of bartered around quite a lot. Gentle parenting. What on earth does it mean? Is it good? Do you agree with it?
So I don't agree with labelling parenting, if I'm really honest, which might sound odd from a parenting specialist, but just from vast experience, and I think being a parent myself, it's kind of cemented this even more for me, is why do you need to slap a label on it? Just be a parent. As you were saying, you know your child best, you know it. And I think sometimes parents don't realise there's a lot of noise going on. There's people like me on social media and have websites and things with all the information out there. It can get a bit noisy and bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so you forget, who your child is and
to use your instincts.
And just, we all have that parental instinct. It's all there, ready to be used. We just have to tune into it.
We only have about a minute left, so I just want to go back to the viewers' questions because they're the most important. So Lila on Facebook says, grounding and not getting to play with their friends always worked in our house. How do you feel about grounding?
I think it's a reasonable point. It depends what the punishment's for, what they've done. But I would say as well, boundaries and rules and things are very important to have. Kids thrive on routine, they thrive when they've got boundaries and rules, so it's really important to make sure they're implemented. But what those rules and boundaries are will vary from family to family, and that's absolutely fine.
Carol on Facebook, very quickly, I have 2 kids with autism. The youngest has a rare chromosomal disorder. I remove phones and toys and she will have an early night, but in school she's a nightmare. What do you do if a child is good at home but a nightmare at school?
So, in this case, the child's autistic, so that's a very different sort of scenario. But I think all kids behave better for other people. So as a nanny for many years, I can tell you how lovely children are with you, and then you see them with the parents and like, whoa, that's not the same child. And, we get good reports from school and things on your kids and you're like, they're not like that at home. But we're their safe space, so they can feel like they can let it all out, especially, after school meltdowns are very normal because they've held in everything all day. And you're their safe space. They want to let it out on you.
Okay, so we have to take that as a compliment. Lucky us. Thank you very much, Kirsty, and also Isabel for joining us for that conversation. A huge thank you to everybody at home for joining in.